Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to discuss what you must know before you take a loved one to the hospital. And I'm glad that you're joining me today, and I'm speaking to you not only as a nurse, but also as someone who has been a patient and someone who has taken a family member to the hospital and someone who has spent a lot of time with family members in the hospitals over the years. Unfortunately, we don't live in the good old days of medicine anymore. And I hope that you will take this video as a cautionary, somewhat hopeful advice giving session, because I think in order for things to get better in the United States, we're just going to have to really rip the Band-Aid off, no pun intended, and deal with the facts as they are. So there's a news report that was going around here locally in Tennessee about increased waiting times, etc., in hospitals, and this is a real thing, but we need to really own what has happened here and get down to the root cause of it. The first thing, we are dealing with a nursing shortage, and we're dealing with a shortage of healthcare providers that has been heavily exacerbated by the intervention of the federal government and the cabal of hospital companies getting together with the vaccine industry and essentially coercing nursing staff and other healthcare professionals into taking experimental drugs, threatening them with being fired, and indeed firing them and physically removing them from premises and getting security involved. Many people have forgotten this, even though it was only maybe 6 to 8 months ago when a lot of this was going down, and even a year and a half ago. But the nursing shortage that we're seeing is entirely due, in my opinion, to two factors: the natural agingness of the labor force, the labor market, and then also the intimidation tactics and the threatening and the coercion on the part of hospital companies and the companies that are involved in staffing. Imagine this: if you threaten a nurse and you tell her you have to take something experimental shoved into your body, and if you don't do this, we're going to fire you, when nurses who actually have a conscience and who have more than 2 brain cells to rub together stand up and say, "Screw you, I'm not coming into work," then you're going to have a nursing shortage. So part of what we're seeing here that you have to expect is serial understaffing, worse than it has been when you go into the hospital. And part of the implication for this is that your family members are going to be receiving by default a lower standard of care, which means you have to expect that your wait times are going to be increased, that medication errors are going to be more common, that care standards as a whole are going to slump, and that you are going to have to expect serial incompetence on the part of health caregivers whenever you go into the hospital situation. That seems a little bit extreme. Some people might say, well, gee, Patriot Nurse, don't you have a love for your profession? Like, shouldn't you be more positive towards other nurses? Oh, believe you me. Some of the heartache that I have spent over seeing the transformation for the negative of the career that I love and the profession that I love and that I've devoted my life to watch this thing serially slip into the toilet over the years has been agonizing for me and for a lot of other nurses who I know and am acquainted with, and who have come to my classes, and students of mine who regularly send me updates as to just how bad it is. And why is it so bad? Because essentially we turned people into pawns, and we allowed the federal government, the Biden administration, and our local and state boards to become thoroughly corrupted by big pharma money. And that's not going to get any better until those two things are decoupled, and with the amount of power that they have, certainly in the national legislature and definitely in our state and local legislatures, I don't know how that's going to get any better. So you have to expect, part one, understaffing on the part of your nurses. Part two, you have got to expect a gutted, complete, and total lack of empathy on the part of the healthcare providers that are there. Now, what I'm unfortunately saying here is that you are dealing with a group of people who have had their empathy carved out of them for various different reasons. Being overworked is a part of this. You know, you only have so much heartache that you can spend, you know, watching patients die, watching people suffer. But that's part of it. Overworked and understaffed nurses create situations where the nurses who are staffed are absolutely gutted of their empathy. Not in every case, but I'm saying that it's troubling enough of a trend that I'm making this video for you right now. So not to say that all nurses are like that again, because I'm not one of them, and I've worked with people for whom that is not the case, but this is a big enough issue that you need to be aware of it. You also need to be aware that there has been a fundamental transformation in the type of person who has been attracted to healthcare and into nursing over the years. And I saw this in the mid-2000s. I saw this shift happening, but my now late aunt warned me and cautioned me before I went into nursing, and she told me, listen, don't do this. The industry is changing. It's not going to be good. I'm getting out. And she was a, 20-something, 30-something year cardiac veteran nurse. So she knew that of which she spoke, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for y'all, I did not heed her advice. But what's happened now is that the type of person who's going into nursing is not just going in for altruistic or beneficent motivation. A lot of this is being packaged as come and make money, write your ticket, show up and punch your card, and you dig yourself out of debt or get rich or whatever. Like, I've never become rich being a staff nurse, I can tell you that for sure and certain. But the type of people that are attracted into nursing now is reflective of the generation and the pool for candidates. And we are seeing a generation go into practicing medicine that has been raised on screens, that has been raised in broken and dysfunctional households, that have not had structure, have not had boundaries, and who have in many cases substituted a father figure for the government and for Marxist ideology. And where this really comes into play is when you get nurses, particularly those involved in pediatrics, who, if you challenge them as a parent in the care of your child, or you challenge, for instance, the protocols on immunization protocols or whatever, that these nurses in many cases, and also these healthcare providers and social workers, feel it their bound duty to notify DPS or CPS and participate in state-mediated kidnapping of children for political ends or for basically non-compliance on the part of parents. So you need to understand that when you're taking family members into this system, you must be very careful about the way that you package your choices, particularly if you decline certain medical advice. They call it advice, but is it really advice if you don't take it, that they take your children away from you? or they accuse you of some sort of crime or neglect? Or that's not advice. That's the Politburo, not a dissenting vote ever. You're dealing with people in many cases who don't have that part of their heart functioning or that part of their brain functioning that says, it's okay if this person does not agree with my best medical advice. That is their prerogative to choose as a patient. I am a facilitator of care and a patient advocate, and if they choose to reject my best advice, I must nonetheless advocate for their autonomy. That is not being taught in nursing schools, I guarantee you that. It was barely taught when I was in the early 2000s. But friends, and again, I want to say this, that not all nurses are like this, and there are some good ones out there, but the tide that is on the upswing right now is one that does not recognize the right of a patient or the patient's guardians or advocates, to care providers or advocates, to legal guardian, care provider, or advocates, to make decisions that are in conflict with the best advice of the medical industrial complex. And the last point that I want you to understand is you are going into the medical industrial complex when you go and seek care. Obviously, I would say, like, if someone's life is being threatened, or the ABCs are being threatened, that you obviously go and save a life. But I want you to understand that these are the circumstances that you're taking people into, that you are going into a grid. That grid is, for the most part, not friendly towards the values of our republic, towards self-sufficiency and freedom. It is certainly not friendly towards a traditional and herbal, in most cases, and herbal modalities of healing. It is very antagonistic to them for many different reasons, not the least of which is that traditional and herbal ways of treating disease are a great threat to the profit margin and to the control grid that this industry has carved for itself. So I wanted to kind of give you the straight dope. And if you have had a different experience, I'm very grateful for that. And I know a lot of healthcare providers, nurses, doctors, EMTs, paramedics watch me, and they can vouch for this. And I would be very interested, for those of y'all who have seen this in any facet, or maybe if you've had a different experience, please leave a comment down below and let me know what your experience has been like with a family member in the hospital, or whatever the case may be. Because it's definitely changing, and I would submit that, again, the best advice and the best action points that we can have is to be self-sufficient and independent as best as possible. And even if you're not going to be 100% of doctor extraordinaire or a super healthcare provider when the grid goes down or when there is no availability, the more that you have educated yourself, the more steps that you have taken to decrease your dependency upon the medical industrial complex, the better. So I hope that video was helpful for y'all. If you did enjoy the video, I hope you'll subscribe to me here on YouTube, Patriot Nurse. You can also support me on Patreon, subscribe to our cryptocurrency and PayPal. I have links below. If you want to get some training, you can train with me online, and I've got the link down below. 4 hours, it's $129, gives you the foundations of medical preparedness. You can also train with me in person, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Keller, Texas, the Dallas area, this year in 2022. Schedule for 2023 will be rolling out soon. I will be curtailing my travel schedule next year. I will not be going out as much. Been doing this for almost 12 years on the road, guys. So my hope is actually to be able to launch an herbal coursework for you guys this year online as well, and then launch other classes that will be debuted in the Tennessee and in the Southeast next year. So I hope that video was helpful for y'all. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later.